visits to Old Delhi in the early 1960s, he was often accommodated by different businessmen who observed the tradition in Indian culture of being charitable to sadhus. Having sojourned in various premises within Old Delhi districts such as Chhipiwada and Nai Sadak, he was eventually offered a more permanent dwelling by Pandit Sri Krishna Sharma, honorary secretary to the century-old religious society Sri Naval Prem Sabha. Prabhupada's room was on the second floor of a small temple in a narrow lane of Chha Rahat Street in Chhipiwada. There, Srila Prabhupada would spend many hours translating Srimad Bhagavatam and writing articles for his book Back to God and magazine, as well as preparing for his journey to the USA. He simultaneously maintained his rooms at Sri Sri Radha Damodar Temple in Vrindavan, commuting between the two premises. Chhipiwada is a locality within the greater Chandni Chowk street of Old Delhi in which publishers, printers, bookbinders, and paper merchants have been running their businesses for hundreds of years. In the narrow streets in the district, tradesmen can today still be seen carrying out work tasks in much the same manner as they did before the current era of digital information and technology. In the crammed tapered lane surrounding Chha Rahat Street, rickshaw peddlers fill the rickshaws to the brim with all types of paper goods, while those on foot carry large loads of paper on their heads and shoulders as they run through the streets delivering their bundles to merchants. Shri Shri Radha Vallabha Mandir. It is estimated that Shri Shri Radha Vallabha, who preside over this small Vaishnav temple, in which Srila Prabhupada would spend countless hours translating and typing, were first installed on their altar 125 years ago. K.C. Sharma, who lived in the adjoining building, had been one of the 7 trustees of the temple, while his father had in turn organized the carving of the deities. The black stone from which Lord Vallabha is carved is known as Kasoti stone, traditionally used by the jewelers in India to test the purity of gold. Radha Rani was carved from white marble. Although much of the exterior of the temple building has progressively deteriorated and repeatedly been renovated over the many decades, the inner altar chamber appears much as it did more than a century ago. Srila Prabhupada's room was situated directly above the altar, and on its marble floor stood a pyramid-shaped structure above the deities to prevent anyone from standing there. The room opened up onto an open-air terrace-style rooftop that surrounded the room. On 19 August 2011, this building was legally transferred to ISKCON, whose members now care for it. Srila Prabhupada arrives. My visit to Chhipiwada ISKCON was preceded by some rudimentary arrangements made for my research. Devotees at the temple had contacted people in the Delhi region who had interacted with Srila Prabhupada during his tenure there in the 1960s. Understandably, most of them were now elderly, but their memories of Srila Prabhupada had remained intact. Perhaps the most striking person I encountered was Srikant Vedi, who as a boy had lived at the Chhipiwada temple at the same time as Srila Prabhupada. Srikant Vedi has many memories of his time spent with Srila Prabhupada, and he was happy to share them with me. According to Srikant Vedi, Shri Shri Radha Vallabha temple was built in the late 1800s for his grandmother Srimati Subhadra Vedi, who required a suitable place of worship. Subhadra had been a medical doctor, freedom fighter, and guru with a substantial number of followers. One of her followers had donated the land on which the temple was progressively established according to her instructions. Regular Bhagavad Gita classes was held at the temple, and annual Rath Yatra festivals were inaugurated. There in the late 1950s, at the age of 11, Srikant Vedi, along with his mother and sister, took up residence at the temple to take care for the aging Subhadra. Subhadra had been using the same room that Srila Prabhupada was given. Vacating the room, Srila Prabhupada Vacating the room, Subhadra left behind a library of religious books written in Sanskrit, Hindi, and English, some which Srila Prabhupada would read. Shrikant Vedi remembers the day Prabhupada first arrived at the temple. He was 14 years old and had opened the door to receive Prabhupada. When Prabhupada first came, I had opened the door for him at night around 2 a.m. I was still wearing my night clothes. I had the keys to his room. I was told that this Swamiji is going to come. He was addressed as Swamiji then. He had him with him a stove, aluminium plate, lota, pressure cooker, kartals, manjira, and other kind of hand cymbals and mridanga. Shrikant Vedi tells how Srila Prabhupada always treated us like kids and that he regarded Shrikant Vedi as his own son. The Vedi family tended to Srila Prabhupada's needs and he in turn affectionately gave them all nicknames. My whole family was looking after him as and when required. My mother was providing food and preparing meals. So Prabhupada called her Baby Gima, baby's mother. Baby was the nickname of my younger sister and my nickname was Babu. I was helping him in his day-to-day work, life at the temple. During his stay at Shri Radha Vallabha temple, Srila Prabhupada would rise at 3 a.m. He never took a bath in hot water, says Shrikant Vedi. He always bathed in cold water in all seasons. After bathing, Prabhupada would do kirtan up until 7 a.m. He would chant the Mahamantra by himself, often accompanied by a mridanga, chimta, or a jhanjhar, percussion instruments. He would then start typing. Between 9 and 10 a.m., he would go out for his routine course and come back just before noon and take a short nap. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada would offer the 7 p.m. Aarti to Shri Radha Vallabha, and at other times Shrikant Vedi's mother Shakuntala would do it. He rarely gave classes as he spoke in polished English, which few old Delhi residents could understand. The 150-year-old building that shoulders Shri Radha Vallabha temple to the left of the entrance is owned by the Sharma family. Sisters Seema and Savita Sharma remember their interaction with Srila Prabhupada in the 1960s. They were young girls and fascinated by the elderly guru from Bengal. Says Savita, we were kids then and used to take his carbon paper for his typewriter and run away. He used to never yell or shout at us. He used to affectionately take his carbon paper back and give us a new one. Giggles. Savita, then 6 years old, remembers how playful and affectionate Srila Prabhupada was with them. She and her sister would deliver 1 bottle of milk every day to Prabhupada, as her father worked for the Delhi milk scheme. But the delivery of this milk was done in a rather unusual way. Cut into the wall that separated the two premises was a small entryway that had been long abandoned, with the surrounding wall remodeled. The entryway was too small for adults to fit through, but the Sharma sisters would easily climb through to deliver Srila Prabhupada's milk. Savita Sharma remembers Srila Prabhupada's gentle and friendly nature. He used to give the children very nice instructions. When he saw them coming back from playing, he would tell them, study well and take the Lord's name. In the evenings, he walked around and around on the roof. He was very polite. When he spoke to him, it felt very much as if someone from your own family, your own person was speaking with you. He was the gentleman amongst gentlemen, never interfering in anyone else's business. Just he did his worship and translated his books, his Gita. He used to address us by our home names or nicknames. My name was Bhalo, good one. In addition to Shrikant Vedi, his sister Alka and the Sharma girls from the next door, other neighborhood children such as Usha,
You find that when Prabhupada comes to India,
Sure.
you see, Prabhupada established his cause, he established his cause, and then told you what to do well.
Yes, Manoj.
To India.
Yes, Manoj.
I did day to day now.
Yes. आज भारत के सिविल एविएशन महाराज 1967 में प्रेजेंट थे।
इसमें है किताब में तो पाजी मुझे आज
तो वो एक्सेस आने दो इंडिया
ये
यही है।
दिखाइए
Chapter 5 Swamiji's Departure. At the San Francisco airport, Prabhupada smiled but said little as the devotees greeted him with flowers and kirtan. It was different this time. He walked straight ahead with the aid of a cane. Jayanand was waiting with his station wagon to drive Prabhupada to the private house they had rented north of the city at Stinson Beach. First, Prabhupada said he wanted to visit the San Francisco Radhakrishna temple. Jayanand drove to 518 Frederick Street. Prabhupada got out of the car and entered the small storefront.
Hey, Mom. Yeah. ये करेंगे
Adigram Puji?
हाँ मैं उसके उसमें नहीं है मैंने बोला है वो आपसे बात करके जमा लेंगे
Prabhupada got out of the car and entered the small storefront, which was filled with waiting devotees and guests.
फोन मेरा सूची है ना
He bowed before the smiling Jagannath deities and without speaking a word, left the room, returned to the car, and departed for Stinson Beach. The ride up through the seaside cliffs was so winding and climbing that Prabhupada became nauseated, and even lying down in the back seat and having Jayanand drive slower didn't help much. Kirtananda realized that it would be too difficult for Prabhupada to visit the San Francisco temple from Stinson Beach. But maybe that would be just as well. He could spend all of his time recuperating. It was a modern, single-story, six-room house with a Japanese roof. A sign out from front read, Paradiso. Srila Prabhupada noticed in the front yard, amidst fashionable lawn furniture, a statue of Lord Buddha, a garden ornament. When Prabhupada entered the house, he found Mukund and his wife Janaki waiting for him. They bowed down and Janaki wept in happiness. Prabhupada smiled but kept walking, slowly and silently through the house. The large living room overlooking the Pacific Ocean was decorated with some of Jadurani's paintings of Lord Vishnu, Radha and Krishna, and Lord Chaitanya, as well as with the Indian prints of Jagannath Puri. Prabhupada's bedroom, also facing the ocean, had sliding windows. On the wall was a portrait of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and a painting of Radha and Krishna. Prabhupada smiled and said the paintings were very nice. The devotee agreed that only Kirtananda and Upendra would stay and serve Swamiji. They wanted Swamiji's stay to be peaceful so that his health could improve. That night, Srila Prabhupada felt pain in his heart and couldn't sleep. And he didn't rise early morning for translating. At 5 a.m., Kirtananda came in and opened the window slightly so that Prabhupada could receive the soft ocean breeze. Prabhupada sat up in his bed, chanting the japa and gazing at the feet of Krishna and Srimati Radharani. A mountain range to the east blocked the morning sun. Ever since Prabhupada's stroke, Kirtananda had been regularly massaging Prabhupada's morning and evening. Kirtananda would rub Prabhupada's head vigorously and then sit behind him and massage his back. Next, he would massage Prabhupada's chest, his arms, and his legs, the complete massage lasting sometimes more than an hour. Since leaving the hospital, Prabhupada had also been taking daily morning walks, even while on the lower east side. And this morning, he went down for a walk on the beach, accompanied by Kirtananda and Upendra. As Prabhupada walked on the beach, he pointed his cane towards some bubbles in the sand. Just see, he said, there are living entities everywhere. There is no place without living entities, and yet they say there is no life on the moon. The beach was rocky, and there were cliffs where the waves crashed powerfully like thunder. Do you hear this sound? Srila Prabhupada asked. This is an echo of the gopis' heartbeats when they are feeling separation from Krishna. He walked for an hour until his two young servants were both tired. Do I tire you walking? He laughed. This walking and massaging are saving my life from day to day. Then he continued walking. By 11 o'clock, the sun finally appeared over the mountains and through the clouds. Srila Prabhupada, his head wrapped with a towel, sat in a folding chair on the beach, taking in the sunshine. He kept saying he needed more sun. After lunch, the sky was again overcast. In the evening, Prabhupada called Kirtananda and Upendra into the large living room and led them in a subdued kirtana, singing Hare Krishna and Govinda Jai Jai. He stood and led them in a large circle around the room. He would stop before the picture of Krishna, bow slightly with folded palms, turn around, and then continue in the circle. On July 8, after Prabhupada had been at Paradiso for 2 days, Shyam Sundar and Mukunda drove up from San Francisco. The next day was to be Rath Yatra, and Shyam Sundar and Mukunda, the first devotees to visit Prabhupada since his arrival at Stimson Beach, told Prabhupada all about the festival preparations. Of course, the whole festival had been Prabhupada's idea, but the devotees in San Francisco were trying to do exactly as he had asked. Srila Prabhupada had first gotten the idea for the festival while looking out the window of his room above Frederick Street. Noticing flatbed trucks passing below, he thought of putting Jagannath deities on the back of such a truck and conducting an American-style Rath Yatra festival. He had even sketched a truck with a 4-pillared canopy on the back and decorated with flags, bells, and flower garlands. And he had called in Shyama Sundar, "Make me this card for Rath Yatra." Now, ready and sitting outside the temple on Frederick Street was the cart, a yellow herds rental truck, compliments of the diggers, and complete with 5-foot columns and a pyramidal cloth canopy. Sitting with Prabhupada on the beach, Mukunda told how all the devotees were working with great enthusiasm and how the hippies in Haight-Ashbury were talking about the Jagannath parade that would take place the next day. The devotees had tried to route the parade through Golden Gate Park, but the police department would only give permission for them to go south down Frederick Street to the sea. Mukund said the devotees planned to have Jagannath under the canopy, facing the right side of the truck, Subhadra facing the rear, and Balram facing the left side. He wanted to know if it was all right. Actually, Prabhupada said the deities should ride in separate carts, pulled with ropes by the crowd through the streets. Maybe that could happen in future years. Do it nicely, he cautioned them, and don't hurry it up. The devotees should drive the truck slowly through the streets down to the beach, and there should be constant kirtan. Mukunda and Shyam Sundar glorified Jayananda. He drove all around San Francisco, getting donations of fruits and flowers found people to help decorate the cart, installed the sound system on the truck, and distributed posters in the stores. He was tireless, and his enthusiasm was inspiring everyone else to take part. The woman had been cooking chapatis all day, so there should be thousands to give away to the crowd. The devotees had prepared hundreds of Hare Krishna Rath Yatra festival balloons to release on the streets as the parade began. When the devotees asked what else they should do, Prabhupada said that this was all: a procession, prasadam distribution, kirtana. The people should get a chance to see Lord Jagannath and chant Hare Krishna. There should be chanting and dancing in front of the cart throughout the procession. But do everything nicely, Prabhupada said. Do it as well as you can, and Lord Jagannath will be satisfied. The next day in the quiet afternoon, Prabhupada was sitting in the living room, chanting on his beads. Upendra was with him, and Kirtananda was in the kitchen cooking a feast. Suddenly, Prabhupada heard the familiar ringing of cymbals, and he became very happy, his eyes widening. Looking outside, he saw the Rath Yatra truck with Lord Jagannath, Subhadra, and Balram, and dozens of devotees and hippies eager to see him. He went out to greet them and had them bring the deities inside and sat them on the top of the upright piano. Devotees and guests followed, filling the large living room. Smiling, Prabhupada embraced some of the men while others made obeisances at his feet. Some devotees helped Kirtananda in the kitchen get ready to distribute the large feast he had prepared. Others reported on the success of the Rath Yatra festival. It was great. It was wonderful. It was a beautiful day, they said. And Prabhupada listened, moved by his disciples' description of the celebration. Many hippies had joined the large procession. Mukunda, Haridas, Haigrave, and some of the women had been on the cart. And the instruments, including Yamuna's playing on the harmonium, had all been amplified. Everyone in the streets had liked it. The police motor escorts had tried to hurry the devotees, but so many people had crowded in front that the parade had been obliged to go slowly, just as Swamiji had asked. Subala had danced wildly the whole time, and Jayananda had been jumping up and down playing kartalas. From the truck, some of the women had handed out cut oranges, apples, and bananas, and others had thrown flowers. The crowd had loved it. Sham Sundar told how they had been going up a steep hill. Sham Sundar had been driving with his dog Ralph beside him on the front street when the truck had stalled. He had tried to start the engine but couldn't. Then the brakes wouldn't hold. The truck began rolling backward downhill. Finally, he had managed to stop. But when he had tried to go forward, the engine had stalled and the truck had rolled backwards again. He would get it started. The truck would go forward, then stall, then rock backwards. Everyone had been in anxiety. He would get it started. The truck would go forward, then stall, then roll backwards. Everyone had been in anxiety. At last, the truck had started forward and the procession had continued all the way to the beach. Srila Prabhupada smiled. It was a pastime of Lord Jagannath, he said. The same thing had happened when Lord Chaitanya had attended Rath Yatra in Jagannath Puri. Then also the cart had gotten stuck and no one had been able to move it. The king of Odisha had brought forward the most powerful wrestlers to push the cart and pull on the ropes, but it would not go. Even the elephants couldn't move it. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had then put his head against the cart and pushed. Only then did the cart begin to move. Now Rath Yatra had come to the west, and with it the pastimes of Lord Jagannath. Prabhupada noticed some devotees were missing. Where are Yamuna and Janaki? He asked. The devotees told him that some pipis had handed out candy spiked with LSD and that a few devotees had unwittingly accepted it and were just now recovering. Subala related how, after the festival, they had travelled out on the freeway in their flower bedecked, canopy covered truck carrying 30 devotees and the deities of Jagannath, Subhadra, and Balram. They had driven up through the mountains in what must have been one of the most unusual vehicles ever seen. After all the visitors departed, the deities remained in the house with Prabhupada and his servants. Prabhupada felt satisfied that his disciples had successfully held a Rath Yatra festival. Although untrained, they were sincere. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and Bhaktivinoda Thakur would have been pleased to see the first American Rath Yatra. The whole world was in anxiety. Prabhupada explained to the devotees gathered in his room that evening. Only in the spiritual world was there freedom from anxiety. Becoming free from all anxiety and returning to the spiritual world was the purpose of Krishna consciousness. And festivals like Rath Yatra made people Krishna conscious. Prabhupada had many ideas for festivals. If he had the money and the manpower, he said, he could have a festival every day. There was no limit to Krishna consciousness. The Rath Yatra festival was another sign of the good reception for Krishna consciousness in the West. He wrote Brahmanand in New York. The house is situated in an exceptionally nice spot and the house itself is aristocratic. So there is nothing to complain about the house and the place. The only difficulty is that I cannot go to the temple on account of the zigzag course of the road and crossing the mountains. Anyway, the devotees are coming here and Rath Yatra festival was just performed with great pomp. More than 500 people followed the procession to the beach and there were about 2 dozen cars. They distributed thousands of chapatis and at last Sri Jagannath, Subhadra and Baladeva kindly came here in our house and will stay here for 1 week and then return. Srila Prabhupada still talked of going to India. He had virtually made up his mind to go. The question now was when and whether by the western route via Japan or the eastern route via New York. The grey skies and unseasonably cool temperatures of Stinson Beach were a disappointment. His health was still poor. He even spoke of dying. It didn't matter whether he died in Vrindavan or in America, he said. If a Vaishnava dies in Vrindavan, the land where Krishna appeared, he is assured of joining Krishna in the spiritual world. Yet, when Lord Chaitanya had travelled outside Vrindavan, his devotee Advait had assured him, wherever you are is Vrindavan. To be always absorbed in thinking of Krishna was also Vrindavan. So if he were to pass away while preaching Krishna consciousness anywhere in the world, certainly he would still attain to the eternal Vrindavan in the spiritual sky. Nevertheless, Prabhupada wanted to go to Vrindavan. It was the blessed place to die or to recuperate. Besides, he had a plan for bringing his disciples to Vrindavan for training. He expressed this plan in a letter to Srimati Murarji, the owner of the India Steamship Company. I am thinking of going back to India as soon as I get sufficient strength. I am now considerably old. I will be 72 years next September. But the work which I have begun in the Western world is not yet finished, and I require to train some of the American boys to preach this cult all over the Western world. So if I return to India, I will have to take with me some of the boys for training. They are all nice boys to take up the training. So your cooperation in this connection is greatly needed. You have already allowed my men from India free passage. Similarly, if you allow free passage for some of my American disciples, they can come to India and take training from me at Vrindavan. And the idea is that in this old age, I do not know when the death will come, when death will overcome me. And I wish to die in the last days of my life at Vrindavan. Prabhupada told Kirtananda, Hayagriv, and others that he would take them with him and show them
Good.
मेडिसिन बॉक्स अंदर कर दीजिए। हाँ, चल रहा है। आगे का डोर बंद कर दो। डोर बंद।
Now back to Param.
हाँ मैं चेक कर लेता हूँ।
Prabhupada told Kirtananda, Haidev and others that he would take them with him and show them the sacred places of Krishna's pastimes. With the meaning of temples building fund, he would start his American house in Vrindavan. I may come to Montreal performing the opening ceremony of restoration of Radha Krishna Vigraha. Then I may go to India for 6 months. As there is a program for construction of an American house for training teachers at Vrindavan. Vrindavan is the only solitary transcendental abode within the universe where Krishna consciousness automatically reveals. Therefore, I have a great hope to train some of my disciples for preaching work even in my absence. I am an old man and attacked with serious disease. I may be overcome by death at any moment. Therefore, I wish to leave some trained preachers so that they can do the work of Krishna consciousness in the Western world. That is my ambition. I hope you will pray to Krishna so that I may be able to execute my duty properly. When Govinda Dasi told Prabhupada that she was anxious to serve him again as she had in New Jersey, he replied that he would be going to India to try to construct an American house, where you will be invited to come and live for all the days, both your husband and yourself. You will find a very peaceful atmosphere in Vrindavan to worship Krishna. Waiting for sufficient strength to travel, Prabhupada continued his daily routine at streets and beach. 1 or 2 at a time, devotees would visit him.
दोनों बंद कर दो।
ये
मारना लेते हैं। हरे कृष्ण प्रभु। आवाज आ रहा है? वो ना धो के आ रहा है। अच्छा बताओ, थोड़ी देर में देखता हूँ। आप रूम में है ना? संतोष को बोलता हूँ, आप रूम से ले जाएंगे। सामान मैं बताता हूँ, ड्राइवर को बता दूंगा।
भागवतम के लिए दिया है। श्रीमद् भागवतम का उन्होंने अनुवाद करने के लिए, श्रीमद् भागवतम पर व्याख्यान देने के लिए, तो इससे पता चलता है कि श्रीमद् भागवतम का जो स्थान है वो सर्वोपरि है या सर्वोत्तम है। इसलिए प्रभुपाद ने ये बहुत सुंदर व्यवस्था प्रदान की है, नित्यम भागवत सेवया, कि हर एक व्यक्ति को प्रतिदिन हर स्थिति में श्रीमद् भागवतम का सेवन करना चाहिए। क्यों करना चाहिए श्रीमद् भागवतम का सेवन? तो परीक्षित महाराज कहते हैं, भव औषधि श्रोत्र मनोभिरामा। ये भागवतम क्या है? परम औषधि चाहे किसी भी प्रकार की समस्या क्यों ना हो, चाहे नींद आने की समस्या क्यों ना हो, तो वो व्यक्ति आता है प्रतिदिन, और इस प्रकार से साधुओं के संगति में आने से उसके हृदय में श्रद्धा जागृत हो जाती है, और ऐसे श्रद्धा के माध्यम से वो साधुओं का आश्रय ग्रहण करता है। आश्रय लैया भजे कृष्ण कारण नहीं तेजे। तो ऐसे महान भक्तों का आश्रय वो स्वीकार करता है, वो साधु महात्मा का, और एक दिन वास्तव में भगवान का महान भक्त हो जाता है। तो इस प्रकार से हमें जानना चाहिए कि ये जो भगवत कथा है वही एकमात्र दवाई है।
धन्यवाद। हाँ, क्या चीज? कहाँ है? रूम नंबर 7 गेस्ट हाउस में, ठीक है, तुमको लेके जाइए। रूम नंबर 7 में है, तुमको लेके जाना है, वेट कर रहे हैं आपका। ड्राइवर जा रहा है, तैयार हो गया, जा रहा है स्टेशन। बोल दिया है उसको, कर रहे हैं।
आधा वाला को उनको इन्फॉर्म कर दिया ड्राइवर को, रूम नंबर साथ में रहेगा तो हाँ हमारे ड्राइवर को में कुछ रहना चाहिए। वो कभी गया इन्फॉर्म नहीं किया, इन्फॉर्म करके बोल रहे थे। जब भी गया तो इन्फॉर्म करना चाहिए कि मैं जा रहा हूँ कहीं, तुम्हें उड़ जाता है। इन्फॉर्म नहीं करना कि जा रहा हूँ।
पुरुषोत्तम मास स्पेशल दर्शन कीजिए भगवान का। ये दर्शन फिर 3 साल में एक बार मिलेगा, फिर 3 साल के बाद, क्योंकि पुरुषोत्तम मास स्पेशल